Welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. Getting a lot of questions around the country about wheat fertility and timing of application. You know, as that wheat starts to break dormancy in the spring, it's a good time to give it a little pep, and fertility may be the answer for you.
Well, one of the most important things if you're going to be seeding a spring crop is managing the residue that is out in your field. You've got to get a good stand. I don't care what crop it is. Otherwise, you're in trouble for the rest of the year. Remember, you maximize yield the day that you plant. Everything else is about trying to just maintain as much yield as you can. So we have to get a good stand in the spring. We're going to talk about how you manage through that heavy residue.
We've got a weed of the week that I'll be surprised if you can identify it. We'll see coming up later in the show. But first, here's today's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time each week, we talk about one of the things that we work on the farm or something that's going on in agriculture and try to relate that to the non-farmer. So if you're a non-farmer, we want you to understand a little bit about farming. We think it's important to make sure that we're connecting from farm to city, from farmer to non-farmer.
Well, one of the questions that we get is, where does the seed come from? Who grows the seed? Well, with soybeans, really any seed that's grown out in the field could potentially be saved, but seed companies will have designated fields grown with certain numbers, generally the new varieties that are coming out, and they'll take those and treat them extra special to do everything they can to make sure that seed has high germination, vigor, and seed quality.
With corn, we've got a male plant and a female plant. They cross, and that offspring, the hybrid, yields a lot more than if I was to take an inbred. Well, with soybeans, it's not that way. The plant is going to reproduce internally. It's just a whole different deal. So we're not worried about crosses. We're not worried about hybrids, anything like that. A farmer can go plant almost any soybean seed, and that could be the seed for next year. Darren said that seed companies have certain seed fields. The reason why they do that is they want to isolate those fields at least a little bit so they have good weed control, they have good overall quality, good fertility, disease control, insect control, just making sure the seed is going to be very good going into the next year.
All right, so let's start with harvest. So farmers will get out in that field to harvest that seed in the soybean field, and they'll try to take it a little bit wetter than they might otherwise take seed. If they're hauling soybeans into the elevator wants them to be 13% moisture or less. That optimizes their storage conditions in their grain bins. However, for seed fields, the seed companies may advise farmers to take the beans somewhere in the 12 to 14% moisture range, a little bit wetter than if they were just hauling beans to town. That way they can try not to crack up the seed or even damage the seed coat. If the seeds are plump and juicy and full of moisture, it's less likely that seed's going to get beaten up through the handling process.
So Darren started with harvest. I like to start the whole year before that on those seed fields, because what farmers will do typically with seed fields is they will make sure that the fertility is really good. So if they do everything right all through the growing season in terms of fertility, weed control, insect control, disease control, you'll see the seed size be even bigger. That's ideally what we're looking for. So we have a nice plump seed with plenty of nutrition there. So if things are a little bit adverse for the farmer when he plants that seed the next year, it can survive.
Okay, so back to my train of thought on the harvest. So the farmer will bring this seed into a conditioning plant, and the seed company will have a variety of different seed cleaning machines to take out any potential weed seed, any pods or stems that happen to come in with the harvesting equipment, and they'll try to clean the seed up that way. The soybean seed needs to be whole, and it needs to be unblemished, really, if you're going to get maximum growth from it the next spring.
Most of the farmers that we work with now are getting their seed processed at conditioning plants that have color and shape sorters. And what these machines do is they literally take every individual seed, they have a camera that's on it, and if it's a different color, if it's the wrong shape, if there's anything wrong with it, there's a puff of air that kicks that out. It is amazing what these color and shape sorters do. But because of that, then, there is absolutely better seed quality for the end user, and that's the reason why we recommend that to any farmers that we work with.
So soybean seed may not be quite as complicated as hybrid seed corn to produce out in the field. But still, farmers are taking a lot of steps to improve the quality, the germination, the seedling vigor in that seed. That starts with planting time, where they're putting on plenty of fertility so the plants have plenty of food. They're using disease and insect control to make sure that plant has as little stress as possible. And then from harvesting and all the way through the seed conditioning process, that seed is handled very gently in order for the farmer the next year to have great seed to plant.
Well, if the farmer wants high yield, even after planting that great seed, he's got to control weeds, especially our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a Soil Max Gold Digger tile plow. Soil Max tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a Soil Max Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with Soil Max. Visit soilmax.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Some prefer to invest in fields halfway around the world, in short-term solutions to long-term challenges. At Poet, we're investing in the fields we have right here at home, cultivating communities and growing the local economy, creating new local jobs while we create worldwide energy solutions, helping family farms grow even as they fuel the world, because we know that investing in a community can pay global dividends. See the world differently with Poet.
Being a farmer means securing your land and livelihood for the future. Harvest Solutions from Capello USA have the grit to get you there. Our product lines for corn, sunflowers, and forage are designed for efficiency and longevity, preventing harvest loss while minimizing maintenance and downtime. To do everything you can to advance your farmland to the next generation, call us at 855-CAPELLO or visit us at capellousa.com. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
All right, so we're standing in corn stalks right now, and I just picked up this corn stalk, and as I assumed, it's sopping wet. Here's the problem. If I wanted to go plant today, and I'm gonna try to cut this residue with my coulter on the planter, how good a job am I gonna do? Probably not very good at all. And the problem is you can't get a farmer to wait until everything dries out. I know I don't want to wait on our farm. I'm saying go, we gotta go, we gotta plant today. Right, so what do you do with stuff like this in the springtime? Well, it really starts back in the fall. We use chopping corn heads on our farm. We strongly advise that you do that. That's definitely going to help you. But if you've got stuff like this in the spring, we want to talk about how you can manage that and still have a successful crop this year.
All right, you talked about the chopping corn heads that we use on our farm. That's a great first step. Now, obviously, if you didn't do that last fall, it's too late for that to come into play. But I just wanted to hit back on last fall a little bit. Our farm, our area, we were pretty dry at harvest time, and a lot of guys were able to get out in the field and chop up any stalks if need be. But there were many areas across the country that were wet, and maybe in your area you were kind of wet in the fall and you thought, oh, I wanted to get some tillage done, but I couldn't get it done. Now here we are with these long stalks that are soaking wet in the spring. We've got to get some days of sun and a little bit of wind out there to try to dry things out. One of the best tools that I've found for working through these stalks, trying to chop them up, is just any type of coulter cart, whether that's a Salford with individual coulters doing the work, whether that's something like a 330 Turbo that we've used on our farm that has gangs of coulters that does a really nice job. I mean, there are a number of different coulter type machines out there that can be used just to go coulter straight up and down to slice through some of those corn stalks so you can get them worked up.
Yeah, we've used a twister as well. We've used a number of these different tools, and the point is we're doing vertical tillage here. We don't want to use a disc. That's what we used to do in the old days, but our dad would always say, well, boys, don't ever disc in the spring because you're just going to make a mess. You're going to create a lot of compaction out there. We don't want to do that. With these coulters, you can slice without creating all that compaction. So that's the reason these machines have gotten so popular in the last few years. And again, you can manage things differently if you do stuff different in the fall, but here we are in the spring. Now we're stuck. We got to do something to get these pieces of residue manageable, because like I say, the big issue here is if you come along with a planter and things aren't absolutely just perfect, you're not going to slice that very well with your coulter, and then you're hairpinning residue, you're dropping seed on top of residue, and it's just not going to grow. That's not what we want. And you know, we've really been taking a hard look at our planter. We're putting precision planting equipment on our planter even. We're trying to do everything we can to maximize not just the stand, but also having the right placement out there, because we want every seed to come up at exactly the same day. Well, how's that going to happen if I've got lots of residue here, not very much there, no residue over there, especially if that's intermingled throughout the field? It's not going to work very well.
One other big concern we've got with this residue is how are we going to get it to break down? It's one thing to slice it up and just manage it, but then how are we going to get it to break down? One of the things I like about those coulter type machines is that we are getting a little bit of soil mixed with those stalks. You're bringing all those microbes up, putting them right on the stalk so they can start breaking it down. And then when we think of fertility, if you're putting a lot of nitrogen out over the top, that residue is going to tie up a good share of that nitrogen because the residue is so high in carbon, often 60 to 80 parts carbon to only 1 part nitrogen. And you need to get that down to more like 10 to 14 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen if you want to really start breaking that material down. So it's okay to put some nitrogen up top and say, you know, I'm going to put a little nitrogen up top just to try to help with that residue breakdown. But if you want to have more nitrogen availability for your crop, you probably need to inject it underneath the soil.
Yeah, and see, that's where I would disagree. I would say I want maximum breakdown, so I'm going to put not just nitrogen, but also sulfur and maybe some other nutrients right out on top, so I can flip that carbon and nitrogen ratio now. And everybody worries, oh, I'm going to have lots of the nitrogen tie up. Yeah, you are, but guess what? That nitrogen is going to come available for either this crop or the next crop if you get that carbon to nitrogen ratio
You may have to over-apply the nitrogen a little bit in that case. Now, that may not be possible on all soils. If your cation exchange capacity is low, you may not be able to hold much nitrogen at any one point.
Yeah, but you can't get that worried about that, because all of a sudden we got all this residue that's going to tie up the nitrogen. So that changes the equation a little bit. All I'm trying to say here is our topic is how do we manage this residue? And what I'm saying is put a bunch of nitrogen out and sulfur. And yes, I mean, you can't put 400 pounds out or anything like that, but get some nitrogen and sulfur out over the top. Use one of these coulter carts and do it as early in the spring as you possibly can. That's how you break that residue down faster.
Okay, then the next thing, we talked a little bit about the planter, but you have to be set up to move that residue out of the way, whether you're in strip till, in no-till, or even in conventional till. Make sure that you are moving that residue out of the way in front of your row.
If you farm for very many years, you're well aware of probably all this stuff that we're talking about, but the reason why we're bringing it up, I can just tell you from firsthand experience, we haven't even taken this planting thing to the level it's needed to be taken to. You know, we've been talking about 200 bushel corn for quite a number of years now. I'm sick of talking about 200 bushel corn. Let's talk about 300. How are we going to get to 300? Well, we're not going to get there unless we get a great stand. We have the seeds coming up all at the same time. We have to do a better job there, and it really starts with managing this residue.
And it also starts with having good weed control and stopping weeds like our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Lost time and spilled product costs your farm money. The AgriLite conveyor system has one of the fastest product transfer speeds on the market with virtually no spillage. Over 10 feet of horizontal swing gives you the ability to dispense product with precision and eliminates any need to reposition. AgriLite conveyors are designed with ease of maintenance in mind and allows for complete installation or removal in less than an hour. Designed to save you what your farm needs most, time and money. AgriLiteTrailers.com. Lightweight, efficient, dependable.
I wish I could apply all the PK and micronutrients this crop needs at planting.
You can. When your soils are not excessively nutrient deficient, You can apply a whole season of PK and micronutrients when you plant and get top yields at harvest. AgroLiquid's exceptional nutrient compatibility and superior efficiency allows you to prescription apply everything your crop needs safely and conveniently. Research proves it. For more info, go to agroliquid.com.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
This year's projected U.S. soybean yield will lose over $500 million per point in shrink. Eliminate shrink in your bin. Store grain without lowering moisture content with the AgriDry Bullseye Temperature and Moisture Controller. The Bullseye monitors air temperature and relative humidity, allowing your fans to utilize the weather's natural condition to maintain your grain at market moisture. Fan run times drastically decrease along with the cost of over-drying. Eliminate shrink today. Call now.
The math for getting higher yield potentials is simple. 4 is greater than 2. Steiger Rotrack Series tractors give you proven Case IH Quadtread technology, helping you cover more acres in less time. And with 4 independent oscillating tracks, you'll also minimize ground pressure and compaction for a better growing environment, all of which adds up to higher potential yields. The world of farming is changing. Be ready with Case IH.
Our next topic is wheat fertility, timing, and application.
Well, whether we're talking about winter wheat or spring wheat, right now is a good time to be thinking about what you're going to do for nutrition out there. If you're talking about spring wheat, we need to start looking at the soil tests and seeing what that's calling for and getting a good idea of what we're going to need overall for total fertility. With winter wheat, we've already got some fertilizer out there from the fall.
Well, we hope.
Yeah, we hope we do, and we probably do. And now in the spring, it's going to be, all right, let's execute the rest of our plan.
So let's start on that winter wheat thing. We definitely hope that you soil tested last fall, you applied P and K, micronutrients, all those types of things. But here's our recommendation early in the spring. It's getting at least a little bit of nitrogen out there to get a good early boost, get good recovery coming out of that winter. Usually we would recommend that you do this with stream bars. So there are a lot of people who will do foliar, and if you're going to do that, you got to put a lot of water with that. On our farm, we've got tram lines out there and run these stream bars, putting some nitrogen out. Whenever we put nitrogen out, we're usually throwing 6 to 8% sulfur along with it. In other words, of our mix, our total mix. The other thing would be micronutrients. If you didn't do that last fall, we would probably recommend throwing a quart and a half of micronutrients out, blended micronutrients. That usually helps give you a boost in the spring as well.
Hey, I want to get into this nitrogen discussion just a little bit. How much nitrogen is coming free from organic matter? Will it come free in time to help this year's crop?
Well, with organic matter, it's going to mineralize throughout the course of the summer, but it doesn't happen until things heat up. Many times it's early enough to help us with protein, but maybe not early enough to help us with big time yield. So to Darren's point here, for talking about this organic matter, yes, you're going to get some free nitrogen, 20 to 30 pounds of free nitrogen for every 1% of organic matter.
That's over the whole season. So maybe instead of figuring 20 to 30, maybe you figure 15 or something like that.
Well, no, I wouldn't even figure that. I wouldn't even figure that. You're not going to get that. So it all depends on the area of the country you're in. Just understand that much of this is going to come through the mid to late summer timing. So it's not going to help you out as much as you'd probably like on the wheat. So you got to have a good nitrogen program there, not just for yield, but also for protein later in the year.
Okay, the other thing with nitrogen, before we leave that topic, when we're thinking about spring wheat now, we get the question all the time, should I just put all my fertility out at planting time, or should I save some of it for later? If we put a whole bunch of nitrogen out right at planting time, we're going to end up with more tillering rather than more growth, and we end up putting a lot of our energy just into producing tillers rather than putting on ahead.
To Darren's point, yeah, if more goes into vegetative, then you might have a little bit less that's available later for protein. So I'd rather split it up too. The other big thing is, if you haven't done this, soil test, look at your cation exchange capacity number. The other thing is we strongly encourage you, use nitrogen stabilizers. They help keep nitrogen in the ammonium form, which is better for the plant, and it's more stable and not leachable.
Okay, another challenge, Brian, I'll pose it as a question to you, is nutrient stratification. For guys with wheat, a lot of the fertilizer gets done in a broadcast manner, and much of that fertilizer is concentrated in the top inch of soil.
Yep, so we still encourage you, even if you're a wheat farmer, even if you're in 7 or 10 inch rows, to band your fertilizer and place it down in the soil where it needs to be, 4 to 6, maybe even 10 inches deep with your phosphorus. That's where it's safest.
Well, one last thing, we'd really like to encourage you, take some plant tissue analysis throughout the season. What you get from plant tissue analysis, it'll tell you what nutrients your crop is short on that time. That way, if you need to do a little bit of foliar feeding, that's a good indication. Or if you're running short in nitrogen, you know, hey, I need to do some stream barring out there if I want to have high yields and high protein.
Or it helps you learn for next year, what can I tweak in my fertility program to make it better? And the big thing that I would leave you with is make sure you're soil testing, and then not just soil testing, but learn how to read the soil test, make the right adjustments, and take a look at the Ag PhD fertilizer removal app to see how much in terms of each individual nutrient your wheat crop actually needs to get good yields. Well, another important thing if you want good wheat yields is controlling our weed of the week. We'll tell you how to stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Is Horay Vervain.
I love it when we have weeds that are difficult for most people to identify, because sometimes people say, oh, that's a pigweed. And it's not as much fun for me, Brian. I love it when it's something like Horay Vervain and you're really scratching your head when you're putting pictures up. Boy, I don't know what that weed is. I wonder what that weed is. And you know, it's Horay Vervain, and you do see it around. That's one thing that I'll say. A lot of times you see a name like Horay Vervain that you really haven't heard about or don't use in everyday conversation, but it is a weed that's out there. It is one that needs to get controlled.
Well, you do see it because it can get up to 5 feet tall. This is a perennial forb. Some people look at it as a flower. I just look at it as a weed. We don't want it in our pastures. We don't want it in our cropland. So here's how you would control it. In the pastures, you're going to have the best luck with Toradon as long as there are no trees around. There are some people that will use Grazon or Ally or Chaparral. I really like Toradon the best. I think that's going to give you the best control. You can also burn it back a little bit with amine and ester, but let's not forget, this is a perennial weed. You got to hit it hard if you want really good control.
Well, the big thing is we see it in these non-crop areas and pastures, and if you want to have grazing for your livestock, whether it's cattle, horses, whatever, you have to control weeds out there. I know just driving through some of the drier areas of our country, we see pastures that are just let go with weeds. And you have to think about it this way. Each pound of weed growth out in those pastures is taking away 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of grass growth that could be feeding your animals. So if you want to maximize the number of head that you're putting out per acre, you need to do a great job controlling weeds like Horay Vervain.
Okay, in cropland, we don't have a lot of real great control options. Since it's a perennial, Roundup is obviously going to be the best, but regular tillage usually knocks it back pretty good. A good burn down with something like an amine or an ester, maybe a Banville in front of corn.
Or a Verdict or something that has sharpen
in it. Yep, that's not too bad either. That's really the approach I would take. Post-emerge, we just don't have a lot of good options. In corn, I'd try Status. Soybeans, you just about have to go Roundup and Roundup Beans. Liberty has some activity, not quite as good as Roundup. In wheat, burning it down, then you're in pretty good shape because the wheat usually chokes it out, so not a big concern post-emerge.
All right, it was a fun Weed of the Week today, Horay Vervain, but stay tuned, Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
winter, we talked about how we were mixing several products together as we're applying fertilizer and even when we're spraying herbicides. I want to make sure you don't have any problems at home if you try this on your farm. My question for you is this. Have you ever had to clean out a sprayer or a fertilizer tank because 2 or more products weren't compatible? I'll show you how to avoid that nasty job in today's Iron Talk. There are a lot of new products coming out each and every year, and I like to try new stuff. However, I don't want to have problems in the fertilizer tank or in the spray tank. The best ways to avoid this fate are to, number 1, ask questions of suppliers and manufacturers. They've tried mixing their product with all kinds of things during the developmental stages of the product. If they know for sure something won't work, it could save you a lot of trouble. The second thing I do to avoid trouble is doing a jar test. Mix the various things you plan to tank mix in a clear jar in the order in which you will add them to the tank. For example, let's say you want to mix some fertilizer with another fertilizer and some water. I always like to add the water first as it seems to minimize problems later on. Then add the 2 fertilizer products one at a time. Shake the jar vigorously to see if any problems arise. Then add the second product and follow the same procedure. Watch for a few things. If the jar gets warm, there may be a chemical reaction taking place in the jar that could adversely affect the products you're putting together. Also, watch for clumping or settling out of solid particles. If no adverse reactions are noted, you should be in good shape to mix your products in those big tanks. For a chart including the order to mix various products and the amounts of each to add to the jar test, visit agphd.com and check under the Resources tab. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
We know that the future is liquid. That's how Agroculture Liquid Fertilizer creates the highest quality products on the market. Because we're committed to finding the best raw materials at the best price possible and getting them from us to you in the most sustainable, responsible ways possible. Agroculture Liquid Fertilizers, helping you grow the future.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving and rocks and has contour conformity equaling 0 downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
I've been involved in developing new technologies in agriculture for over 3 decades. The changing times demanded that we develop new and better equipment. Dry powder applications on seed can only be highly successful if they can be easily, effectively, and accurately applied to the target. That's where our company, Changing Times and CT Applicators, come into the picture. The innovative CT Applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, soybean inoculants, or other dry products. Remember, CT Applicators for the changing times.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots from Monsanto Bioag is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get Quick Roots today.
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time for today's show, but if you're looking for more agronomic information, we invite you to tune into the Ag PhD radio show. You can find us each weekday at 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. Central on SiriusXM Channel 80.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Farmers focus on controlling weeds in their fields in order to produce more food. Abundant food supplies help Americans spend less of their income on food than nearly any other country in the world. To learn how farmers do it, visit rnmf.org.